Greetings, everybody. It's nice to see you in this very scorching summer we're having with interesting weather last night as well, I think, for many people. This is our 37th town hall, and it's wonderful to see you for it. I'm really delighted and always grateful to our Society for Leading Medicine for sponsoring this series. Particularly grateful to Dr. Waverly and Adam Peaks, as well as Kristen and John Berger, who chair the Society for Leading Medicine. You know, we talk oftentimes about, well, obviously we started with COVID, then we started moving to a lot of our clinical areas and scientific areas and specific, niche areas oftentimes. Some common things, some not so common things. Today we want to actually zoom back out and talk a little bit about Houston Methodist and specifically talk about the community with Houston Methodist. You know, if you go back to our history, we're 104 years old. And throughout most of that history, that was one hospital, whether that was at the corner of San Jacinto and Rosalie or whether that's been since 1951 in the Texas Medical Center. And in 1948, Baytown was founded, and it came into our system in the 80s. But really until 1997, then opening in 1998, we did not make the decision to really push out into the community. And of course, this last 25, 26, 27 years, we've done tons of that. And so today, if you look at it, almost 3/4 of the equivalent admissions, which is a measure of activity, happen outside of the Texas Medical Center. About half of the revenue still in the Texas Medical Center because of the acuity and the severity of patients and the transplant programs and other things. But we have become a very large system with 30,000 employees and multiple hospitals. So of course, in addition to in the medical center, we have acute care hospitals in Baytown, in Clear Lake, in Sugar Land, in West Houston, in Willowbrook, and in the Woodlands, as well as then a long-term acute care hospital that has two campuses now, one within the medical center and then its original on the west side. And we're building a new campus in Cypress. So we thought it'd be interesting to talk about really the rest of Houston Methodist today. So I'm delighted to be joined by two amazing colleagues, both of whom have been with Houston Methodist for a long period of time. At my left is Chris Siebenaler. Chris is the Executive Vice President and heads up our southern region. He is also the CEO of Sugar Land Hospital. And at my right is Debbie Sukin, who is our Executive Vice President over the north region. And she is also the CEO of Houston Methodist, the Woodlands. And they'll be here to tell us about each of their respective regions and then answer many of the questions that you all have been sending in. As always, if you're interested in questions, we'd love to take them on the fly. So you can text the word DeBakey, D-E-B-A-K-E-Y, to 37607. We're also very privileged to have two people helping in the live stream chat. So you can ask anything you want. They know everything. They know more than probably the three of us combined here. And that's Lisa Lovell and Lena Tanasia, who are the respective business development managers at Sugar Land and the Woodlands, and they will help with giving you all of that information. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Chris Siebenaler, who's going to talk to us about our South region.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to have the opportunity to talk about our hospital system. I look forward to hearing what Debbie has to say about exciting things happening on the north side of town. So I'm going to focus on what's happening south of I-10. That's kind of what we call our South region. So let's go into a little bit of the details behind what makes up the South region. So first off, kind of on the left side of your screen is our Sugar Land Hospital. Mark mentioned that Sugar Land holds the distinction of being the first of our hospitals outside of the Texas Medical Center that we built from the ground up. This was in 1998 and was built as a 22-bed health center, I believe is what we called it back then, which was similar to what our Willowbrook Hospital actually was built not too long after that. But effectively, 22-bed hospital that grew to 54 beds. It really was just undersized for such a rapidly growing community like Fort Bend County. And so what we did is we expanded that over the years up to now 350 beds. Sugar Land also is resident for Fort Bend County. Fort Bend County is the most diverse county in Texas and really one of the most diverse counties in the United States. And that diversity is something that we see in our employee base, in our patient base, our physicians. It's just something that is just very much a part of who we are. That diversity of background, of faith, whatever that might happen to be, is something that we're just very comfortable with in Fort Bend County. As we start moving over to the other side of the screen, you look at two very different hospitals. First of all, our Baytown Hospital that Mark mentioned was a hospital that started with seed money from the Humble Oil Company back in 1948. So rich history there of community involvement. So our Baytown Hospital is 305 beds and recently was expanded, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then finally, and one other thing, our Baytown Hospital also is unique because it is the only hospital in Baytown, and so as a result, it really holds quite a bit of responsibility for taking care of that community. And I know the community greatly appreciates what Houston Methodist Baytown does for its community. And then finally, one of our, I guess, newer hospitals, although we're now more than 8 years after the acquisition of our hospital in Clear Lake, which was a hospital that we purchased from the Catholic system, Christus, 8 years ago. So this is a hospital that has, again, a rich history, not dissimilar from our Baytown Hospital. It's a smaller hospital, 153 beds. And so this was a new entry into the Clear Lake Bay Area market. So that's something that we've been evolving ever since. 3 emergency care centers outside of our hospitals, and 1 comprehensive care center, which is located in the Fort Bend market off the Grand Parkway. And I'm sure more expansion in the future for each of those hospitals. Let's take a look at the numbers. I know everyone who hears one of my talks is for sure going to hear some numbers in this. That's a nod to my finance background. 3 full-service hospitals, 41,000 admissions this past year, 5,000 babies delivered. I'm just trying to hit a few of the highlights here on your screen. Almost 6,000 employees and almost 3,000 medical staff work at our hospitals. And it's that team of physicians and nurses and technicians that ultimately, I think, provide the type of care that we need in each one of our communities, and care that we try to provide very consistently across every one of our markets. If you were to look at our primary care base, this is something that we've really grown over the past 10 years. So if you look at our Sugar Land market, we have locations across the county, ranging from a location out in Siena to the east, over to kind of the northwest up on the Grand Parkway. And then this past year opened up a location out in Rosenberg, Texas. So you can see quite a few locations right around our main campus there, which is in the heart of Sugar Land. We've decided to branch out into some of these outlying areas as well. I think if you look at the Clear Lake market, kind of working our way back around, this time I'm going to go counterclockwise. We've built up around the hospital. The hospital is located in Nassau Bay, but we've built clinics around that. So we have clinics right there on campus, but then we also have facilities to the south and out to the west in Friendswood. So our goal there is really to build a presence throughout the Bay Area. And then finally, in our Baytown community, we have our main hospital facility, primary care located at that campus, and then of course out in Mont Belvieu with intent to continue to expand our primary care base. Ultimately, I think the people's first interaction with healthcare is typically through a primary care physician or through an obstetrician. So it's important for us to make sure that we have the number of primary care doctors and OB-GYNs that are located in each one of our campuses. I won't go through each of the details of this slide, but we tend to focus on what we call our centers of excellence. And so we've added our women's services component in there as one of our centers because it's such an integral part of our services. First off, on the cancer side, I think people are surprised at how much care is provided for cancer patients across Houston Methodist. It's truly one of our strengths. While one of our neighbors here in the Texas Medical Center might get a lot of the publicity surrounding cancer care, but frankly, if you look at each of our communities, in many of our communities, we're the leading provider in cancer care. We're accredited from a standpoint of the different accrediting agencies, whether that's the Commission on Cancer, the American College of Radiology, and other accrediting agencies. We also look at cancer care from prevention through survivorship and everything in between. We want to make sure we take care of the whole person physically, emotionally, spiritually. So cancer, very focused area for us. We have a long history of heart and vascular. I mean, we're talking to you from the DeBakey Education Center. And so from a heart and vascular standpoint, we provide, I think, very high-level procedures at our campuses. And we have nurse navigation to help patients kind of work their way through that process. Orthopedics and sports medicine, another key component. We have relationships in every one of our markets that are tied to our schools. We have athletic trainers that typically are on the sidelines at sporting events. We have physicians who are on the sidelines at sporting events. So when you look at our orthopedic and sports medicine program, lots of strength there across every single one of our markets. We also have in some markets orthopedic and sports physical therapy residencies. So for those patients who require just a little bit extra touch of rehab post-procedure, we can handle that in our campuses as well. On the maternal and child side of our business, we, depending on the location, we're either a level 2 maternal designation or a level 3 NICU designation, which means we're taking care of babies all the way down to 26 weeks or so. We also have obstetrical emergency care that's provided separately by licensed OB-GYNs, and that is outside of our respective emergency departments, but still on campus. So that if someone comes to us with an obstetrical emergency, we have an obstetrician that is right there to take care of it. And there are more obstetrical emergencies than I think the general public realizes. So having that safety net, I think, is huge for each one of our communities. And then finally, on the neuroscience side, primary stroke centers at each of our campuses and specialty care that is supportive of that, whether it be sleep medicine, movement disorders, or in one of our campuses at Sugar Land, we're thrombectomy capable, which means we can do a mechanical intervention of a stroke patient when they come into our hospital emergency department. So lots of information there. Debbie will expound even on more of that when she goes through her talk on the North region. A couple of quick highlights to talk about. We opened up in November last year our Unity Tower in Baytown. This is a beautiful hospital expansion out in the Baytown community, really the first major expansion that we've had out there in many, many years. If you haven't had a chance to see our hospital out there, it really is quite a sight. We also just recently have opened our emergency care center in League City, which really is one of the fastest growing areas in the greater Houston area. This is at a great location there in the League City area, only about 10 minutes from our main hospital there in Clear Lake. And then finally, our most recent expansion in the Sugar Land market has been focused on our office building 4. And on the first floor of that office building, we've built out a digestive health center that will support hospital procedures for colonoscopies and other procedures that could be done on an outpatient basis. So the opportunity there is to make sure we take care of non-emergent or urgent procedures in a very friendly, easy setting for our patients. As you can see, we've been able to connect all of this through skywalks, and so in this heat, you want to make sure that you're able to go across the campus and not have to go outside, which, as a matter of fact, I walked over to MOB4 yesterday, and I walked on the inside because I just don't think I wanted to make that 100+ degree heat walk. So that's just kind of one of our trademarks at Houston Methodist. So I'm going to hand it over to Debbie Sukin. I'm sorry, one more slide there. We do a tremendous amount of, provide a tremendous amount of benefit for our communities. Just under $300 million in financial assistance was provided at the South Region hospitals. That's 25,000 distinct patient visits and $184 million worth of community benefits. We also encourage our staff to volunteer and give back to their community with their own time. So just under 1,400 hours of time were donated through our Eye Care in Action program, which allows every employee to spend 8 hours of designated time for them to donate back to our community. These are just some of the hallmarks that I think are so part of Houston Methodist in our culture. And I'll leave that up on the screen. This just highlights some of the relationships we have in each one of our markets, but I won't go through any of the details there. I know Debbie has a ton of interesting things to talk about in the North region, so I'll hand it over to her.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate it. And I will share with you that while we're changing screens here, I will really expound upon many of the things that are represented, not just in the North region, but really you should have confidence in that are happening at all of our hospitals. And so, let's get this to advance.
Let's try this one.
Hold on, there we go. Thank you. We'll advance. So just to give you a brief orientation to the North region, we are a growing market. I don't think I need to tell any Houstonian that of what's happening actually up north. Up there at the top corner of the slide, you can see our Houston Methodist Willowbrook Hospital. It's a 358-bed hospital, and I will share with you, having been with Houston Methodist when we first opened that hospital as a 60-bed hospital, much as I reflect upon the growth and development that you just heard about Sugar Land, it's just been incredible, and it leads market in terms of really serving the patient population and having developed into a full-service hospital. What you see next is Houston Methodist West Hospital. It's a 271-bed hospital. That hospital just celebrated, actually, it's now been open for a decade, 10 years. It's just been incredible watching the growth and development and certainly being responsive to what's happening out off I-10 and really the explosive growth really between Memorial, Katy, and beyond. And then our continuing care campus, that really is at our Katy location. That is our long-term acute care hospital. And you heard Dr. Boom really reflect that not only do we have our LTAC facility at our Katy location, but we're really proud to say that we recently expanded to actually open up inside the Houston Methodist Hospital at our Fannin location, so right there in the heart of the Texas Medical Center. And then Houston Methodist, the Woodlands Hospital, we open, and we will be celebrating our 6th birthday, actually on June 26th, so just next week, and we are just shy of 300 beds and continuing to grow and develop, and it has just been an incredible opportunity to really be able to meet the needs of that community. What you see there in the center of the screen, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That's really our Houston Methodist Cypress, and I have to tell you, that's an old already picture. It changes every day. I will share with you that our 3 cranes are coming down, and we could not be more proud to really enter into that market. And again, we'll speak to that shortly. So here's the numbers by the North region. Again, 3 full-service hospitals. I think what's really important is that different from when we opened up Sugar Land and Willowbrook, where we really intended them to be, quote unquote, that health center or what we would deem as a feeder hospital. That is not the intent. What you're really hearing us say is that the intention is that we really serve the markets. We lead medicine in the markets. And I always reflect upon a conversation I had with Dr. Boom when building the Woodlands Hospital to say, well, should we open up a cancer center? And he would say, Debbie, I don't really know how we can lead medicine if we don't provide cancer care. Perfect example to that. When you talk about the number of employees in the North region, well over 7,000 and growing, and you can appreciate as we open up Cypress, we'll open up with over 500 employees. So when we talk about being an incredible economic development aspect within each of our regions, we play a very important role in these communities. We see over, again, 280,000 patients. We have, with the collection of hospitals, 922 licensed beds, and again, as you might expect, more than 3,000 affiliated physicians to actually provide that care, close to 3,000 nurses, and then when you see the results in terms of just our overall numbers in terms of ER visits, we are very busy. I think what I really want to bring your attention to, and I'm really quite proud of not only in the North region, but I know Chris is quite proud in the South region, is that when we talk about really how our outcomes and really driving those, is that everyone should have a level of pride and also confidence that regardless of what location you go to at Houston Methodist, is that all of our hospitals are magnet hospitals. What does that mean? Nursing excellence. It is the highest achievement you can have in our industry, and it really does set us apart. So when people ask me, how's it going with regard to nursing retention or employment, I will share with you the best of the best. They want to be a part of Houston Methodist because they recognize what we stand for. And it should be no surprise that other outcomes, when we talk about Leapfrog A, which are things that actually companies look at all of our hospitals are Leapfrog A rated. And I can just continue on. When the expectation is to perform in the top 10th percentile of all hospitals nationwide, you should have the confidence that that isn't just something that we behold at one hospital like the Texas Medical Center, but actually that is the expectation at all of our hospitals, and we achieve that. So continuing on with, well, what happens outside of on the campuses? You know, I'm really proud to say that we focus on really meeting the needs of our patients where they live. And so when we talk about that, if you think about a 25-mile radius that sits around any one of our campuses, there are different access points. And so we have 5 additional emergency care centers that surround those hospitals. We have 2 comprehensive care centers. What does that mean? That means that we will have some of our hospital-based services, not only with primary care physician clinics at those locations, but also perhaps offering diagnostic imaging, physical therapy. And then you'll see we also have 1 new comprehensive care center coming. And again, that really just takes what I've shared and really adds additional services. So in other words, you don't always have to come to a hospital campus to be able to access our services. So from a primary care group perspective, we have been growing and very, very active in this aspect. We have over 104 providers and continuing to add every day, and we have more than 22 locations. And again, if you just think about how we look at each of these campuses, we really look at where the needs are and the demands within almost a 25-mile radius around each one of those campuses. I always say, if you don't have a medical home or a primary care physician, we can probably find one for you, and we can find one whether it's close to where you work or it's close to where you live. And whether we're talking about the North region or whether we're talking about the South region or any one of our hospitals. So Chris went through what are some of the key highlights as we talk about our centers of excellence. I won't walk you through each one of these either. Again, I'm hoping you're getting a feel for the level of excellence and expectations are consistent, regardless of what location you go to. We are particularly proud of our Commission on Cancer accreditation at both our West and our Woodlands hospitals. I will share with you, Willowbrook is right behind, and I'm pretty confident that we will be sharing that they too will be receiving that accreditation. We're working hard to be able to really expound upon, obviously, all of the offerings that we represent as a part of our cancer center here in the Texas Medical Center. And I will share with you probably one of the things that we are most proud about at our campuses is the offering of our clinical trials. And the fact that patients have access to clinical trials, again, without having to necessarily drive into the medical center. And they're very much a part as one team. And I think that that's a really important point. The next thing I would say is in just consistency, whether we're talking about heart and vascular, again, when we talk about complex procedures, we really are offering tertiary care, complex procedures at each of our campuses. We're not attempting to what we term as quaternary care, like transplantation. That's something that we won't do in the community, but we will work with our partners in the medical center to assure that there will be seamless transition if and when there is that level of care that is needed. You know, we strive to be #1 in consumer preference and within all of our centers of excellence. And I'm really proud to say that we achieve that. And so if we're talking about orthopedics and sports medicine, if we're talking about women's services or neurosciences, these are all things that we are accomplishing. I'll just point out one thing that was a little bit different on women's services. It's not different at all of our campuses, but it's different in terms of really additive to what Chris has shared. And that is that when women come to deliver at any one of our sites, when we talk about neonatal care, all of our campuses have a partnership with Texas Children's where board-certified fellowship-trained neonatologists are actually in our hospitals taking care of our babies that are the sickest, 7/24. And so that is a really important component when we talk about really providing best-in-class care. From a neurosciences perspective, we've been really proud in the Woodlands to really spearhead really being a comprehensive stroke center. What do I mean by that? When we talk about being able to offer and being able to be responsive, so when you hear somebody say we're thrombectomy capable, what does that mean? Well, we're able, actually, if someone's having a stroke, to not only be able to do the appropriate medical interventions, we're also able to provide 7/24 the appropriate surgical interventions. And so time is of the essence, as we all know. With great care, it certainly is when we talk about having a stroke. And so, again, I just want to highlight and hopefully, again, give you that level of confidence regardless of where you are. So again, we're very, very proud of the level of commitment that we serve in our communities, certainly for those who are either underinsured or uninsured. And you can see there for the North region, we provide more than $315 million with regard to financial assistance. And when we talk about that in terms of community benefits, that's more than $210 million. Where does it go? We really look for to align with federally qualified health centers that we believe in a partnership with Houston Methodist and support that we can make a difference. Or we look for other health centers in the communities where, again, they are providing this level of care to the underinsured or uninsured. And so just to give you an example, out in Katy, that would be like Katy Health Ministries or the Christ Clinic. If we're talking about in the Willowbrook market, some of you know Tamagua. If we're talking about the Woodlands, we're talking about Interfaith Community Clinic or Lone Star Health. All of these have a great partnership, and they're very important to us in terms of providers of care. I will also share with you, we make an incredible impact in our sponsorship and support. You can see in the North region more than $500,000. What does that mean in terms of its impact? You can see, so when someone says, and if any of you sit on the boards of or involved or have a passion around things like the American Heart Association, March of Dimes, whether we talk about aligned programs within the school districts, we too find those places. And not only to provide sponsorship support, we may provide medical support like with the Woodlands Marathon where we're out there, or again within our CISDs, as well as involvement from our employees. So we're really proud of what we do in the community, and it's something that we're continuously looking for those opportunities. So I will just quickly follow up with giving you the highlights of Houston Methodist Cypress. I hope you, when you see this picture, you go, gosh, it resembles what our hospital in, again, whether Sugar Land or whether it's West or the Woodlands, it is modeled off of our existing hospitals. What I'm really excited to share with you is that we have appointed Trent Fulen, who will be the CEO of that campus. Trent is someone who has been with the organization now more than 7 years. This is not his first hospital to build. He partnered with me and was our chief operating officer at Houston Methodist, the Woodlands Hospital. And prior to that, he also had experience that he brings. I will share with you that on this campus, we are deeming it as the smart hospital of the future. And what we are doing is really taking the work that we're doing out of our Center of Innovation and really saying, how can we go ahead and implement that on day one? And what else can we do to really propel healthcare really into the future and lessons learned all along the way. And so some of the things that we're talking about, what is a smart hospital of the future? What does it entail? Everything from being able to do self-control scheduling, so everyone, those know that the world kind of evolves around the iPhone, and being able to make appointments when you want, where you want, with the doctor that you want. And those are things that we will absolutely are making that bet on opening up day one. We're actually piloting it in our hospitals today. When we talk about really no call center agents, again, you can appreciate the old days of hospitals having to build for telecom services and really being able to connect doctors to patients and et cetera. And so you will see that because of technology, those are things that we've been able to do away with, and hopefully making it easier and more accessible for our patients. I will just share with you a smart room of the future. What does that mean? As you walk into a hospital today, you would see a whiteboard in any of our hospital rooms. That whiteboard would have the purpose of really laying out the plan for the day for the patient and really stating things that are going on with that patient. Those will go away. They'll have smart TVs. Those smart TVs will serve many functions. Everything from being able to order food off of our dining services when they want, to really interacting with different physicians, and being able to see their own patient information. So again, just to give you a little bit of a feel. I have to tell you what we're really excited about is this voice over type. So we're very excited about really working towards getting the computer out from in between our providers, the nurse at the bedside and the patient. And really being able with microphone technology and this voice over type, being able for the utilization where instead of the nurse and the physician having to really type in all of their medical notes while talking to the patient, that's actually done with the technology that's available. So we're very excited. Now, what do we do with all this information? I can tell you predictive and proactive analytics, being able to use artificial intelligence to be able to provide, I will tell you, I think proactively, more safety, opportunities, whether we can predict falls, whether we're talking about pressure injuries, all of those things are really coming into play in healthcare, and we are absolutely utilizing them. And then I'll just share with you, robotics are no longer just in the operating room. We're really looking at the implementation of robotics in other areas like pharmacy, delivery, or whether food services. And so all of those things are being implemented. I just want to give you a little bit of the highlights. I'm going to leave you with the last one we're really excited about. I think one of the things we all hear as healthcare providers is no one likes to come to the hospital and be woken up every 4 hours or 8 hours to check vital signs. And so one of the things we're piloting actually today is something called a bio button, which is essentially remote continuous monitoring of our patients. And again, the outcomes and the opportunities there are just prolific. So it's a $650 million endeavor. Again, not something for the faint of heart. We couldn't be more excited to bring this hospital to the Cypress market. It is master planned as a 500-bed hospital. We'll open and actually build it with a 250-bed chassis. It sits on over 100 acres for many of you who might know that area. It's right off 290 between Skinner and Barker Cypress. It's the old Cisco campus, and we will open actually 2 medical office buildings in the first quarter of 2024, with the hospital actually opening up in the first quarter of 2025. So I hope that gives you a glimpse. Again, there's a lot of exciting things happening in the North Market.
For sure. Well, thank you to both of you for great presentations, and it's exciting to see everything going on. So I'm gonna put y'all both quickly on the spot to make a point. Chris, how long you been with Houston Methodist?
Oh my gosh, 22 years.
22.
Yeah.
You came in 2000, right?
2001. Yes.
Right at the beginning of 2001, right? And Debbie, you just celebrated your 15th.
I did.
Debbie went wayward for a little while, came back, but she's got an aggregate 15 years. But and where do you live?
I live out in the Woodlands.
Where do you live?
I live in Richmond.
Okay, so you'll see 2 secrets to our success there. Long tenured, incredibly good executives, and Debbie runs the Woodlands, Chris runs Sugar Land, and then their region. They live in that area, they know that area, they live, breathe that area. They, the people there know them, the leaders in the communities know them, and they're active in those communities. And we expect really similar from each of our community CEOs who are so engaged in the community. I'll brag on them a little more. There's a kind of a healthcare website called Becker's Hospital Review or something like that, and they tend to aggregate a lot of different articles that might be about this or that, but they'll also write some original ones. They just wrote an original one about a week ago, and the exact title was "The Secret Ingredient in the C-Suites of Northwell," which is a system based up in New York and Long Island, and Houston Methodist, and really making the point that long tenured, successful teams that work together, that get along, that know how to work together for the best of the institution are secrets of success. And you're seeing 2 of those people here. So really proud of what each of them are doing to lead our institution. So we had a few questions come in on the wires today. We've had a few come in ahead of time. I'm going to knock the most common question whenever we do anything like this out first, which is from Debbie. So every time I send some note out of we opened up a new hospital here, we're opening up a new the first email I can predict that I will get is, well, what about Kingwood, right? So Debbie, talk a little bit about kind of the Kingwood area.
Yeah. We've been studying the Kingwood market for a long time. Dr. Boom and I have literally have been planning how we really plant our seed in growing, I will tell you, healthcare for Houston Methodist in that community. And in fact, we opened up our first primary care clinic in Kingwood now 7 years ago. We've expanded that with actually opening up a second clinic, and I would call it one of our comprehensive care clinics in actually the back of Kingwood. It's called Kings Harbor, now a little over a year ago. And I will tell you, when we say we're studying it, we really are. We're studying in terms of population growth, population demand, how we can really meet the needs of that market. And I would say over this next decade, we will continue to grow, develop, and expand. And I think everyone should expect that we will be doing something, without a doubt, in Kingwood. I think the magic, and one of the things that hopefully Houston has the confidence in knowing is that Houston Methodist will pick that right time when it's ready to do that next step. And again, as we study the needs in any one of our communities, it's also doing the right thing. Is it more beds? Is it really focusing on an ambulatory development, doing things more in an outpatient? Where can we really make an impact and be additive?
Yeah, so you made a really good point, which is we'll find the right time. We don't pick these areas sort of willy-nilly. I mean, these have been very purposeful. I'm going to come back to you, Chris, in a second with older history in terms of how we started out, but in more recent times, we study the market. And I will say, each time Kingwood's always been on that list of where do we put a hospital next, and it keeps losing to somewhere else. So we've opened up in the Woodlands, we've purchased in Clear Lake, we opened up in West, obviously before that, and now opening up in Cypress as we move forward. But I suspect we'll get there eventually, and it's a little bit about, what can we bite off and how much can we chew at one time as well. Which, speaking with, one of the things, if you go back, I remember vividly being at the grand opening of Sugarland. I got here in 1997, and I think it was March or so of 98. We had the grand opening for Sugarland, a little before you got here, but not much. And it was a health center. It was a small little building, and it was supposed to be sort of this hub and spoke. People would come there, kind of get stabilized, get sent to the medical center. We changed our minds on that pretty actively. Talk about kind of that realization, Chris, and talk about really when we hit that pivot point and how we've been growing since then. And in that context, the master planning that goes into a campus like Sugarland, Debbie's already alluded to that, and a campus like Cypress.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We our Sugarland and Willowbrook Hospital, as we've been discussing, we're built smaller for very rapidly growing communities. And so, speaking specifically about Sugarland, fortunately our predecessors were smart enough to buy land in probably the best location to build a hospital campus in Fort Bend County, and right there, at the right in between Sweetwater Boulevard and Highway 6. And so, I right after we put a shovel in the ground to do our first big expansion in 07, which was opened in 08, we were already thinking our way through, okay, how do we go from 54 beds at that time to 210 beds to 350 beds. That was all part of that process. And so it's interesting. Debbie's been living this life for the last 10 years. Is you're operating what you're opening, and you're planning the next thing. And so it's very thoughtful and well planned. So while we're doing that, we've spent years already working through all that planning that you just talked about, Mark. And so for Sugarland in particular, one of the fastest growing communities in the country, dating back many years, we knew we had to grow and grow fast to be able to serve the market. And so we tried to stay out ahead. I mean, we did our first open heart surgery when we were 54 beds in 2007 because we knew we needed to provide the highest level of care possible to take care of heart attack patients and patients who, frankly, needed to have open heart surgery. So it was was it challenging to think about having that type of service there? It was, but what we did? We partnered with incredible physicians and colleagues here in the Texas Medical Center to help build a heart program at the Sugarland campus. And I bring that up because you can take that and you can stamp it times all of these other areas. We work very closely with very seasoned people, colleagues across all of our campuses, and we're constantly sharing how do we develop a particular service line. So while Sugar Land kind of got out first relative to heart and vascular, Debbie, when she was opening up the Woodlands Hospital, went out and built a comprehensive stroke program. And, we learned at some of our sister hospitals about what we learned from the Woodlands opening up their comprehensive stroke program. And so we've modeled some of what we did in stroke after what Debbie did in the Woodlands, just like we modeled what we learned in Sugar Land to open up an open heart program and do minimally invasive heart surgery. And so what's great for me, having worked in Methodist now 22 years, is that I know what your expectations are. I know what our board's expectations are. We're going to do things in a way that is committed to our academic history, that is always focused on safety and outcomes, always focused on providing a personalized care for our patients. And if we stay focused on that, what we build and design around that, I think, is done in a way that I think serves our patients' needs and our community needs, which do change and evolve over time. And we just hit 25 years in Sugar Land. Mark was out at our big celebration not too long ago, and it was great to see such excitement around our community about our 25th anniversary, our employees, our patients. So to me, that's just fuel to want us to do that much more for our community and for our employees and physicians.
It's fantastic. It's I can think of planning every one of our hospitals and looking at blueprints and really schematics and campus plans for every one of them that don't just look at what are we doing today, but they look at what we're doing 10, 15, 20. Every one of our sites is master planned, including the medical center. I mean, one of the things we've done really, really well, I'll give kudos to our building folks, is to always know where we're building next, which in a medical center, it means you have to know what you're tearing down and how you're going to do that, and how you don't disrupt the whole world as you do it. And that's enabled us really, I think, to continue to leapfrog many others as we move forward. Okay, Debbie, I'm going to ask you a question. You kind of alluded to this, and we got this question ahead of time, which is, when do we transfer people? One of the while we're not building this hub and spoke health center model, clearly we have the academic flagship, we have quaternary care, as you talked about. That's this level of care that's really going to be here. And you've got some patients sometimes who need to be transferred. How are those decisions arrived at, and how facilitated is that?
Yeah, I think this is the piece that it's nice to truly be a part of a system. And I think this is really important for our communities that we serve, is that each of our hospitals do not sit on an island all unto themselves. And so what does that mean? That means that we are so fortunate that our physicians, they have colleagues. They have colleagues in the medical center who perhaps might do and do different procedures and really provide a different level of care, a higher level of care at times in terms of subspecialization. And I think that level of confidence, not only for our communities, but I will tell you from our medical staff, is really important. So when there is a patient that is deemed as though they would benefit from actually being transferred to another expert, again, who is one of their colleagues. And I think that's really important that everyone understands. Our medical staffs are not just within its entity itself. They have colleagues across the system, and they call those colleagues in terms of really garnering input. And it's very easy. When one of our physicians deem that is best in the patient's interest to be transferred to the Texas Medical Center, they pick up the phone, they call one of their physicians, again as a colleague, they have a accepting physician, and then in terms of our administrative processes, I like to say it's like having a long hallway down the highway. It's a long hallway. But that should give a level, again, of confidence in terms of that process, is that we really are one system. And so, again, whether we're talking about transplant or whether we're talking about for a very complex, and you can pick it whether it's a neuro patient, a heart patient, I'll even say an oncology, a cancer patient. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's that level of processes that we have in place and really that network of physicians that work collectively together.
Great. Well, thanks. Well, I'm going to take a question now all the way to the other spectrum of seriousness, but it is an important topic still, just a more fun topic, which is somebody who's commented that we have beautiful art in our hallways and asking about how we do that, how much effort goes into identifying art, choosing the type of art, do we work with local artists? And this person in particular is on the board of the Woodlands Art League, so I think they have some interest in displaying some art there. So talk about
Well,
that.
I love this question. I love this question because I happen to be very into this, and I love building hospitals.
That's why I give you this question.
I love designing hospitals and everything about it. It's not something I delegate, I can assure you. And so actually, as it comes to the Woodlands specifically, really, we do have an art budget that we have in order, because it's an important part of the healing and the environment of our patients as well as our staff. And so one of the things that we did for the Woodlands is we said, well, gosh, if we're going to spend money, how about we really try to align it with local artists, whether in our community or really within the region. So because this individual knows and sits, it sounds like on the board for the Arts Council for the Woodlands, you might be familiar with someone named Jane Johnson, who was at our Woodlands Art Festival and one of the feature artists. You will find her artwork in our hospital. You might notice Ed Hayes, who's a very famous sculptor, and his actual studios over in Humble, and he's got lots of sculpture all around the Woodlands. Well, when you drive up to the Woodlands campus, you'll see our cranes, and those are Ed Hayes. And so we've got lots of representation.
Different kind of cranes that she was talking about. With
different kind of cranes, but you all know I love cranes.
Versus cranes, the cranes.
Nicely said, yes.
Well, that's great. Yeah. And but seriously, we are blessed with the Center for Performing Arts Medicine. And Performing Arts Medicine, it actually extends outside of the performing arts and into all forms of art. If you tour our different hospitals, you'll oftentimes see photographs that are done from employee and physician competitions, for instance.
Exactly.
And we'll hang a series of those there, and then some of the really great ones actually become permanent installations, for instance. So art and healing and music therapy and many other things are embedded really into what we do at Houston Methodist. Okay, well, I saved you a hard question, Chris, that came in ahead of time, so lucky you. But this is a very important issue, and one that I know frustrates a lot of people and frustrates us as well. And I'll read you the basics of the question. Very important for a hospital about in-network providers versus out-of-network providers, which is an extraordinarily complicated issue. And they give an example of Houston Methodist Sugarland, where we may be contracted with some Aetna plans, but perhaps some of the emergency room physicians aren't, and commenting very appropriately that that's a really challenging situation for patients. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Thanks, Mark, for giving me that one.
Sure.
No. This is, honestly, this happens to us. We contract with physicians to provide care in our emergency departments, provide anesthesia. And we do require them to make sure that they're on the same managed care agreements that the hospital's on. I think this one particular issue, there's a contract negotiation going on with Aetna and the emergency physician group. And so there are periods of time where a provider will fall out of network with a plan as they're negotiating new terms, and this was one of those situations. And so I have checked in with the team that manages the physician group, and they've assured us that they will be in network, but this has been one of those kind of itinerant issues that we see when we're negotiating contracts. So, but our expectation is always that any hospital-based provider would be in network, just as the hospital is. And it's, I think this particular email that we got in, obviously as a patient or a customer, I would be frustrated as well. So I completely understand why that person would feel that way.
And contact us if you need some more help, because we will work with the emergency room group.
Absolutely.
Just to give you an idea how complicated this is, I mean, I could unfurl a scroll listing all of the plans that we're contracted with across the system, and it would go from the top of this ceiling in regular sort of 12-point font, probably go past this floor, right? So, and that ER group's dealing with the same thing, and of course all contracts come up for renewal, so they're required to be on the same plans, but there sometimes are these difficult times, and of course, let me be clear, the payers aren't always really easy for all of us to deal with either sometimes. So that can get complicated. It gets further complicated because we have obviously many employed physicians. We can align things really, really well there. We have many affiliate physicians who are on our medical staff, apply for privileges on our medical staff, and are private practice cardiologist, private practice, gastroenterologist, and it becomes extraordinarily complicated, as you can imagine, at a 1Z, 2Z, and across reams of those individuals. So we hear you. It is an area we work greatly on. From an employed perspective, we continue to work to be perfectly synchronized, as well as really billing consistently. And when I mean consistently, one bill for everything we do, because we know how hard it is. And so a lot of work being done to make things, I hope, even more user-friendly.
Yeah.
I got a couple questions here I want to cover as well that were asked. I'll answer myself. Okay, in an emergency, how do you make sure you go to Houston Methodist when the ambulance picks you up? It's a great question. As you all know, I'm a primary care physician. Sometimes I get the phone call from my patient, and sometimes it's hang up, call 911, because it's not, we don't want to be dilly-dallying. Or sometimes I'll get a family member call me, and I'll tell them, listen, you're the customer even of the ambulance, right? So you need to be loud, vociferous, and demanding about where you want to go, because the ambulance is probably going to want to default to what's easiest, what's closest. And of course, if you are a trauma patient and you need to go to level 1 trauma center, we're not a level 1 trauma center. They're obligated by law, and they should take you there for true trauma. But oftentimes I'll see them, with trauma. Well, yeah, if I fell and I broke my leg, that's trauma, but that's not trauma center trauma. And of course we can do that. And so you need to be your own advocate. Your family members need to be your own advocate. And you tell them, no, you are taking me to Houston Methodist, and that will work, the vast majority of the time. If it doesn't work, you can then get to another hospital. And once they treat and stabilize you, you have every right to say, I want to be at Houston Methodist, transfer me to Houston Methodist, and they are obligated to do so, and we will do everything we can to get you here. So I think that's the best advice. Almost always you can make sure it happens simply by demanding that's what you want. I also got a question about, and really Debbie's covered a lot of this, but it's really, okay, and this was a very specific question about type of surgical decompression, L4, L5, and things being done at the Woodlands versus being done in Houston Methodist in the medical center. And that's probably too specific here, but the general question was, okay, if I go to Woodlands, am I going to get X? And if I go to Sugar Land, am I going to get Y? And if I go to Baytown, am I going to get Z? And if I go to, et cetera, et cetera. And let me talk a little bit about that, because one of the big things we've focused on is being a system. I'll start at a very simple geographic and architectural level. You saw the pictures Debbie was showing. You're in a Houston Methodist Hospital just walking up to the door, and walking in with the lobby and the healing space that we create and the imagery we have around our values and our faith basis, whether it's a statue of Jesus, the great physician, or whether it's our mosaic that we have everywhere, whether it's imagery around our eye care values or many other things that we do in our hospitals. But even from an architectural geographic standpoint, we recognize that Woodlands has a culture and Baytown has a culture, probably at more extremes within Greater Houston, and we want to also allow some local culture and flavor to thrive for those communities. When you look at the clinical side of things, very much so, it's all about the outcomes. And so if I look at the data, and I'm going to brag on these two for a second, we use Vizient, which is a national health organization, to measure ourselves, and all of our hospitals do extremely well. There's 4 categories of sizes of hospitals. The medical centers in the large academic medical center category, number 6 out of about 115 or so. The next category is the next largest. Sugar Land's the only one of our hospitals in that. It's number 2 in the country out of, 125, 130 hospitals. The next size category has the Woodlands, Willowbrook, West, and Baytown in it. The Woodlands is the number 1 hospital, Baytown is the number 2 hospital, West is the number 3 hospital, and Willowbrook is the number 6 hospital. It'll give you the idea of the consistency. So at the end of the day, it's all about the outcomes and how we get there. A large part of outcomes in healthcare is making sure we adhere to best practices, adhere to the science, and ultimately standardize what needs to be standardized. Now, medicine is not quite the same as building a car, where you're going to standardize and basically have a production line and it's going to be the same every single time. But there are aspects of medicine that need to be just that way, and many aspects that just aren't, right? I mean, we are human beings, we're biological systems. I can attest to the fact that, you will see different patients under the same exact circumstances have very different health outcomes and very different health, course and everything else, because biological systems we're all biological systems, are really complicated. But we work very, very hard to create those standards, create that consistency, so you can be very confident you go to Houston Methodist Hospital, one of ours, and you're going to get superb care. Now, I got a couple others here. Debbie, I'm going to ask you one. These came in over the line today. I'm looking up at the screen that has those here. I think you freaked somebody out when you were talking about no call center agents. They have visions of sitting there in perennial call tree hell, not getting through. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I actually appreciate, thank you for offering me an opportunity to go back. So one of the bets actually also on the screen that I didn't go into details, just because I was trying to move through this pretty quickly, is a concept we deemed, thanks to Dr. Roberta Schwartz, our Chief Innovation Officer, called phygital. What does that mean? Phygital is this word that she came up with, which really is this recognition that you can't be all digital. And you're going to still need to have some physical aspects for a lot of different reasons, whether it is in terms of really, I will say, being able to provide services to a range of different needs and different individuals. So we will have, obviously there will be some call agents, but I think one of the things that we have learned with a vast number, and again, I don't have the number in terms of exactly every day, but there are a lot of calls that come in that literally are just triaging, and yet they take individuals' time. And so we have implemented technology that is being used today. There's nothing novel about it. We're actually showing a great success with it, but we absolutely will have individuals within a call center not only to be able to answer live person to get, and also most importantly to connect people with where they need to get to. And so
and a lot of these things are already underway. I mean, if you look at when we needed to do COVID vaccines and all of a sudden we were getting just barraged with phone calls and everything else. I mean, basically, had we not had some of these automated systems and some AI and some other chatbots and things in place, basically what happened, nobody would have been able to get through for anything. And they handled hundreds of thousands of calls to great patient satisfaction to do that. I'm going to hit two questions real quick, then I'm going to very quickly give you an update. I want to thank both of you for a very fascinating discussion, and again, props to both of you, because you really, you and your teams are doing an amazing job across our network and our system. Two other quick questions. Is anybody else going to get a big old update like Centennial Tower, which is getting built 26 stories high? Short answer is thank goodness no, because we have real estate. As we talked about, we have 105 acres, in Cypress, and really every one of our campuses was acquired with real estate in mind. When we got the ground for it, even Sugar Land when it was supposed to be a health center. Willowbrook was a little tight, but we've managed to work around that, and it's still got good space. It's just not great. Clear Lake, when we acquired it, it was a little tight. I mean, we all laughed just the other day about we've bought a Fuddruckers, we've bought a Charming Charlie's. I mean, we tend to acquire the land around us. You would imagine the amount of time I spent on buying a Fuddruckers or buying a Charming Charlie's. Never would have thought it, but that's what happened. So you won't see us go that tall in the community. The last thing, emergency care versus urgent care. Emergency care is truly, I need it now, 24/7, threat of loss of life, loss of limb. I'm sick enough that I'm worried I'm going to need to get admitted to the hospital, et cetera, et cetera. Urgent care is really for problems that are probably going to have long extension of hours, so 7 days a week, probably late into the night, and I need care from a physician, but most likely I don't need admission. Most likely I don't need a CAT scan or an MRI or something else as part of that. They're very complementary and serve sort of different aspects of acuity. All right, with that, I'm going to give you a very quick update, really just some highlights of some things happening around the system. A couple of awards that have come in. I always talk about focus on the fundamentals, and the awards will follow. Well, one of the fundamentals we've been focusing on is diversity, equity, and inclusion at Houston Methodist. Very proud of our efforts here. Forbes actually did all employers in the country best employers for diversity. You can see here we're in the hundreds of those best employers. This is all employees, number 132, 7th of any health system out there. So we're very, very proud of that. Chris mentioned it. I'm just going to show a nice couple of photos here from their 25th anniversary. It was a lot of fun. It seems like just yesterday I did their 20th, and frankly, it doesn't seem that long ago I went to your groundbreaking, which is making me feel really, really, really old. We had an amazing women's health symposium. This is in the Crane Garden at Houston Methodist Hospital in the Texas Medical Center. I don't think I recall seeing this many people ever packed into that lobby. And it was really incredible. Marcy and Leslie Margolis were the chairs, and so many people came. It was a whole half-day symposium leading up to this luncheon as well. Lots of people working in the community with an MS 150 team, raising over $40,000 for the MS Society. Kathleen Kobashi, who, if you were a couple of times ago, you saw Dr. Kobashi speaking here. She's our chair of urology. Sorry, I clicked too soon. She's our chair of urology. She's been with us going on 2 years. Got a major award through the Professional Society nationally, so we're very proud of her for doing that. This is a really cool one. Front page of the Houston Chronicle on the right, our very first graduating class of engineering medicine. So this is our joint program with Texas A&M. Our very first class was about 22 students, every one of them an engineering undergrad or computer science undergrad who comes in, gets a master's in engineering and an MD degree. They graduated. They have now started to spread their wings, and I'm guarantee you they're all somewhere now doing their residency. We kept 5 of them in our residencies, which we're thrilled of. We now have had 4 years contingent. We're just entering the 5th year, the 5th class. So we're very excited to see this moving along. We had the Houston Chronicle Salute to Nurses and Nurses Week last month. 3 of our nurses in their sort of highest category that they were recognizing there, which was very exciting. Really fun event about a month ago now at the ballpark, and Dusty Baker was featured. Dusty had prostate cancer about 20 years ago, discovered on a PSA test as a routine discovery early on, but ended up having significant therapy for that. And it was really a phenomenal event. Gerald and Anita Smith were the chairs of this. And I got to give him props because he got up there and so honestly and from the heart and with humor spoke about some of the most intimate and intricate aspects of going through something like a cancer diagnosis and a prostate cancer diagnosis. And it couldn't be more important for him to do that because in African American men, we see mortality from prostate cancer significantly higher than in non-African American men. And most of that, if not all of that, and that point was made by our experts that were there, is delay in diagnosis. So if you catch it late and you catch it when it's already spread, mortality is worse, outcomes are worse. And so getting that education out there, the screening out there, everything else, very grateful to him for being there. And let me tell you, he's funny. He was great. We really enjoyed it a lot. Then I'll finish up with a nice article I hope you saw, and you can Google this real fast if you like it, on robot pants. And this is specifically an exoskeleton that Dr. Dimitri Sayenko is working on. A woman named Kristen Seagraves, who's 30 years old and paralyzed, paraplegic, was able to walk, and they've been working with her in this exoskeleton and spinal stimulation, basically to see if you can start educating some of the nerves to do some more of their function. Pretty neat work, pretty exciting work, very groundbreaking work, and very proud of him for all they do. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Happy summer to everybody. Stay cool, stay hydrated. Don't do anything unsafe out there. We are going to take a summer break from this series. We'll be back August 17th on a Thursday for our town hall series, and I want to thank Lisa Lovell and Lena Taneja, who were both in the back answering your questions online as well. And I want to thank Debbie Sukin and Chris Siebenhaler for being here. Have a blessed summer. Great to see everybody.